Welcome to another episode of Open World Chat. I am your host, John Odom, and my co-host, Jim. I will never do a Doctor Who episode. Dandino is...
Absolutely not.
Jim?
Under no circumstances.
Yeah, you're going to have to tell me why sometime, but probably not now.
I prefer my special effects to look like they cost more than $5.15.
Dude, you're not an
Wow.
series Star Trek fan.
Personal foul.
So today we're joined by Hannibal, Tabu, and Quinn McGowan. We're really excited. We're going to have one of these conversations I've wanted to have for a long time, which is what's the deal with all these bad Supermen? And you know what, guys? I did this. I just had a feeling today. Something told me, and I checked. And this episode is going to air exactly 2 days away from the 10-year anniversary of Zack Snyder's Man of Steel.
Oh,
A day that will live on in infamy.
I remember it vividly. It's that's the nerd version of Where Were You When Kennedy Got Shot?
Absolutely.
So Hannibal and Quinn, I usually let people introduce themselves because especially folks like you guys have great resumes, and I will short you if I introduce you. So why don't you guys tell us who you are?
My name is Quinn McGowan. I am a comic book artist. I'm a designer, a creator, a musician. For some reason, occasionally an actor. It's a weird thing going on over here. I'm also the editor-in-chief of Legends Press. I think probably the piece of work that I'm probably most known for is Project Wildfire, which Hannibal is gracious enough to write for me. So yeah, I'm making the pictures. See, you could have done my intro.
Because he's leaving out the Disney Plus series where he did art for, because he's leaving out the fact that he's on Young Rock. But okay, if that's what we're doing, Quinn, if we're cutting your resume short, that's what we're doing. Fine.
I'm here to talk about bad Superman.
Bad Superman. Yeah.
All right. Well, quickly, my name is Hannibal Tabu. I'm the winner of the 2012 Top Gal Talent Hunt, the 2018 Cultural Trailblazer Award from the City of Los Angeles Department of Cultural Affairs. I have written for Bleeding Cool, The Source, Rap Pages, Vibe, Black Enterprise, doing journalism. I've had numerous things written, published in terms of poetry, in terms of comics. I've got an ongoing series with Wonderman Comics right now, which is Time Core. I've got a new miniseries that came out last year and a sequel I'm working on right now, well, prequel that I'm working on right now, Supernatural Western called War Medicine, which is with them. MPLS Sound was out from Humanoids Publishing. It was a big graphic novel that I did. And I just released the Dungeons and Dragons campaign setting book, The Sundering the Nation Beneath Our Feet, which was a Kickstarter success to 453% funded with $54,000 plus raised there. And I'm very happy to be here with this fine panel of just eminent minds.
Or something. Well, at least a couple of us are. I always tell you folks who have like long resumes with like multiple talents how much I resent you, but
to quote Little Kim, if I was somebody else, I would hate me too. I get that.
Maybe the first thing we should do is just sort of start enumerating some of these bad Supermen that we're talking about, and then dig into why we're so fascinated by them, especially in the last decade, which is where I'm particularly interested. But
So no Ultraman.
well,
No Crime Syndicate Superman.
Yeah, I mean, bad Ultraman, not good Ultraman.
Right. Not Japanese Ultraman, but Earth 2 Ultraman.
Yeah. I being Scott, not this guy. Yeah.
I think it's worth throwing them all out there. It's because I think there's different sorts of appeal of bad Superman.
Mm-hmm.
The most basic,
Absolutely.
The Roy Thomas version being basically, wouldn't it be cool if these guys all fought each other? That's legit.
Yeah.
For me, I know there have been popular ones recently, but I think my kind of cultural touchstone bad Superman is Justice Lord's Superman from the cartoon. And he's not even, I mean, he's obviously bad, right? Like he's clearly a fascist dictator, but I think the appeal of him is that you see the draw, right? You see how he got there. You can understand why he got into that position in the first place. And it's kind of, they did the Brave New World episode of the Superman animated series where he was also a fascist and basically the same character, but he's not entirely unsympathetic, and that makes him, I think, more appealing than somebody like Homelander. And Homelander has the added cultural baggage of an entire audience of people not getting that he's a bad guy.
Yeah.
What with all the Nazis that are around now.
Yes.
There's no question that Justice Lord Superman is a bad guy. And there's also a lot of sympathy and understanding for how he could have gotten into that position. And that's what makes him kind of the bad Superman in my head. What about you guys?
I'm curious that you didn't go with it. Well, go ahead, Quinn.
No. You go, Hannibal, because I almost know where you're going. Go.
Okay. I was curious that you didn't go with the crime syndicate, because growing up, that was my idea because he was literally made to be, I am the opposite. I eat kryptonite. He chose bad because the universe he was in was bad. That a Superman, a Wonder Woman, a Batman there could not be good. And it was kind of through a mirror darkly that was almost best depicted by Grant Morrison and Frank Quietly in their presentation therein. The idea of making this opposite mirror idea of all of the things that we come to there. Even when you get to, and I hate to quote him these days, Warren Ellis's look at that one in Stormwatch, where it said, farmers are political too. That this Superman, this blonde Superman, comes out with this idea of, presenting things, and he's a hero, but he slowly turns towards fascism. He slowly turns towards it as time goes on. He realizes the ineffectiveness of his methodology. This all comes up for a lot of reasons, which I'm sure we'll get into. I'm not going to go too deep, but that, like, when I think of where did these shenanigans start? I'm like, we got to go with Ultraman. We got to go, not of course Ultraman, but
right. Yep. Not Shin Ultraman,
but yeah. And when I think of him with the Crime Syndicate of America, that's where I immediately start the look at this truthfully cultural degradation of the idea of the Superman.
Mm-hmm. I think it's part of why Hyperion is is really my favorite, just because you can track the entire evolution of how and why we look at these characters over the years. He makes for an interesting metric.
I am, like you guys have the historical portion covered. My fascination personally really centers around specifically Homelander and Brightburn. I think they are symbols specifically of the time that we were in. I think in the moments leading up to this period of time, the thought experiment was broader, right? The kind of, we don't have a traditional superverse the way that we have a Spider-Verse, right? Like there are much broader in some respects considerations of what Superman could be. So you could drop him off in Russia, you could kind of some of those circumstances, and I think those were questions that were being asked a little bit more broadly. And then, like there's a specific turn to where, we talk about the Justice Lords, but it's almost like the Edge Lords came along, and then they were very specifically pronouncing the question, it's lame that Superman is good, right? This world doesn't allow, like they were trying to present that the earth upon which we read all these comics was essentially the earth of the Justice Lords, right? Where the capacity for his goodness becomes this, it's an oversimplification to write off Snyder's approach as Randy, although it's deep in there. But, I remember going to that film with some goodwill and really wanting to contemplate the question that Jonathan Kent presents when he says, I don't know, maybe, in response to letting the kids on the bus die. Because I'm initially engaging that from the standpoint of, these are people who don't want the government to come steal their baby. That's what I was thinking about. I was thinking about the protective nature of his parents and that leading to a semi-nihilism. That was acceptable for me. But again, in the same way that Homelander, everybody kind of misses the message. Everybody immediately just goes into, well, Superman needs to be a badass and let's snap that neck. And it's just like, can fly up with Zod.
Yeah.
We can't think of, instantly coming up with the Phantom Portal gun. Like there were answers there that didn't get explored. And I understand that we were trying to depict a certain kind of world, but it was almost like an overnight wash that from that moment we end up in this space where it's like, no, it's more interesting to make this guy the kind of jerk that I would be if I had those powers. And I think that thought experiment got diluted, and that hurt.
I think that's a great point, because I think that the distinction here, and it's a distinction between, and I'm going to be a little bit controversial here. It illuminates the distinction between Homelander in the comics and Homelander in the show, in that Man of Steel Superman or Homelander in the comics is a story about Superman told by an edgelord, and Homelander on the show is what if Superman was an edgelord, right? And it's a commentary on the edgelords instead of a commentary by the edgelords.
I like that. I like that a lot.
That's very accurate. Yeah.
And Ennis is a brilliant writer, and I don't want to take anything away from what he's done. But like, I definitely bounced hard off of the Boys comic because it was edgy for the sake of being edgy, right? It was not telling. There was no commentary, broader commentary besides "I hate Superman" in it. And the show is very much a commentary on the world that we live in, and using the Justice League and using the heroes as a way to really just shitpost endlessly about the world that we live in.
Absolutely.
One thing I will say too, that I think we should bear in mind, talking about Man of Steel, which arguably, we went to it because it started off this latest era of how we look at Superman, and in the ways it may have been Superman hating. But that time where that moment that you mentioned where he could have said his father, I think that's much more of a significant moment than the neck snapping in that movie, because that's where you really see Zack Snyder's Ayn Randian objectivism come into play, which then continues to inform his movies, which informs the entire thing. This idea there are, the gods among us thing is basically the Rand vanguard, right?
Absolutely.
Some of us are special and the rest of us are in service to the special. And that's and again, you have the distinction in the people telling the story, right? Where Grant Morrison, their Justice League was very much about the gods among us, but it was about the gods in service to the people and not the people in service to the gods, right?
Yeah.
Which is why I don't actually go to Earth 2 Ultraman, because so much of comics evil Supermen or so much of comics alternate Supermen are, in my mind, defined by Morrison's work on it. And everything that they did with all of the alternate Supermen is cutting distinctions on the main prime Superman, right? It is about, and I don't want to get into this because I did 20,000 words on this. It's one of my favorite things that I ever wrote was a hatchet order for Morrison Superman. And it was about how multiversity was just one long Superman exploration where you're taking one thing away from Superman that makes him who he is and exploring what Superman would look like without that one thing, right? So Masterman was without the Kent. The Earth 2 one, Atom Smasher was Superman without, I forget what it was. I think it was without the Hope. And if you look at it, the only issue of multiversity before the last one where the good guys actually won was the Shazam one. So
what happens here with a lot of these things, and the specific reference to the show and the comic with Homelander is very apt, because there's a quote I use a lot of the time from a rapper named Razcast: "The diameter of your knowledge is the circumference of your activity." So if the entirety of your world is this world is hard, therefore people must be hard, then you can't envision a finer world. You can't envision a Superman with hope. You can't write something because you don't understand it. You don't have the conception, the cultural and intellectual framework to create the work to do that. And that, for me, given the training that I was given as a writer, is a deficit. Because I was trained, if you don't know how to do something, you go out there and research it, you figure it out, and you learn. And you learn how to present these contrary ideas to what you know, to what you understand, in some cases, even to what you believe. Because Superman is X. Superman is hope and saving and yada, yada. And if you decide, I want to do something else, I want to do the Plutonian, I want to do whatever else, then you're really not doing Superman. And
you're not doing Superman.
If you're not doing Superman, you need to just admit that. Because the idea that Jonathan Kent could say, maybe to people dying, that's not Superman. Because the unshakable goodness that the Kents installed into Superman, like software, is why he doesn't blow down the entire freaking world as the Plutonian did, as Homelander is apt to do, because they have the absence of love, they have the absence of care, they have the absence of nurturing, they have the absence of all of the things that made Clark Kent believe, I'm okay, they believe in me, therefore I can believe in all of you.
So that leads me to a series of very short asides. So like that, there are a couple of things that I feel like are at play when we talk about the Zack Snyder interpretation. One is that the Ayn Randian concept, as Hannibal was describing, is contrarian at its base, but also it's a terrible way to start a universe. And I think that we, as huge fans of the comics and knowledgeable about the different iterations of Superman and whatnot, we were all kind of a little bit more willing to accept. But I always use my grandmother, we call her my big mama. So I use my big mama as kind of a barometer. If my big mama don't understand it, then it's not for the audience, right? My big mama brought me up on George Reeves' Superman. So Superman is hopeful. He saves cats out of trees. He does the thing where he picks up the wing of Air Force One, just fly. That's what Superman does. If you present a Superman that flies in the face of that, you have lost a huge section of your audience that ain't reading comic books, that ain't doing thought experiments about what if he lived in modern time. They just want to see the guy with the S on his chest do the right thing. And I think that laser focus on the noise of social media or the noise of the comic book fan base began to put the cart in front of the horse about what we're being presented, or else I don't think we're having this conversation, because they would have taken a route that would have allowed the traditional version of Superman to exist. And then we can peek through a window and, what if everything was, a gray wash or whatever, and the audience would be able to follow that. But they started with, what if everything was dark and gritty, and thought that they could make the most hopeful character in the history of the business out of that. And that was, dumb.
Mm-hmm. And this isn't to say that the comics haven't made this mistake also. It's just the peculiarities of the media, right? Like, I'm thinking of, we just got the announcement that Straczynski is going to be writing Captain America now. And I'm thinking back to his aborted Superman run, which was really almost like a war crime. It was genuinely one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. But that was like, Superman as kind of a shitlord, watching a house on fire saying, what did they do to deserve it? The nice thing about that is that lasts for 6 months, and then they can pivot off of it and go back to, course correct and fix it. But when you're talking about a cinematic universe where each movie, each chapter of the story takes 4 years to accomplish, you don't have the opportunity to pivot. And, the business model almost requires you to double down on it. Which they did, and like you said, you're defining Superman by the whole that exists, and then you're going to define Batman off of that, and it just, none of it made sense from that point forward. Batman deciding to turn away from the darkness to embrace the light because this dude who snapped Zod's neck inspired him. It's just, the whole thing just did not work.
So how much
Yep.
do you all think this is taking it a different direction, talking about not just the guys who are like, I want my Superman badass snapping necks or, cutting off Namor's head or whatever, versus sort of the broader idea that maybe it's just about general cynicism, from a reflection of the greater world. I mean, I almost tie this to another conversation I wanted to have in this show, which was whether we're losing that utopian idea, whether we've given up on utopias, and because we're surrounded by nothing but dystopias. And so is this the same thing? Do we just not, are we having trouble believing the real Superman?
Well, I don't think we're having trouble believing. I think that some of us, don't want to confront the work, right? Politically, and God forbid, politically speaking, most of the rhetoric that you hear from people who are, I'll say, negative about sharing the world with the rest of us and being kind to one another, people who don't like that idea. I could easily show you a Superman poster from 1950 where he literally says, we're all Americans and keep your eye out for any a-hole that wants to say different. He doesn't say that exactly, but that idea that the world doesn't exist where that can be possible then allows for them to continue to be like, oh no, so we're not going to, give other human beings rights. We're not going to be kind to each other because that's impossible. So I'm going to say something controversial.
All right.
The removal of the hopeful image of Superman, for me, is akin to the removal of certain books from the school system.
Oh, tell us more.
So you don't have to confront the ridiculous nature of saying CRT is going to get involved in everything. If you have an intelligent conversation about how that's really for college courses that are very specific and in a very specific place, right? Which then you pull that string and it's like, is that at the heart of getting rid of To Kill a Mockingbird? And quite frankly, anything with a black or brown person on the cover of it, even if those books don't even come out or get read until Black History Month or Latino History Month. Yeah, there's a direct correlation between that. Because out of all of the rights that we enjoy in this country, we are often under the illusion that the most sacred right is the right to bear arms. It is not. It is the right to be stupid. We are very intentional about putting a limit and a cap on how much we choose to understand. That's how you end up in a world where you have people arguing about the biology of men and women. But when you hear them talk, you know that they never paid attention in science class. And I'm not trying to be an intellectual bully. I'm saying that there is something inherent to this recent trend in America, a country that wanted to literally have a race to space with another country, right? No idea how we were going to do it. We're just going to science our way up to the moon. That same country is very intentional now about limiting the amount that we know, because if you know more about other people and other things, your chances at empathy are greater. Your chances at being kind to one another are greater. Your chances of being the kind of hopeful hero that Superman is greater, because they put that kid in a pod and gave him books on tape about his solar system. And he became our greatest champion because he was smart, because he listened, because he paid attention and was empathetic. So I think there's a direct correlation between removing the hopeful image of Superman and removing certain books from schools so that you can remove that key of empathy that allows us to look at each other with humanity.
Oh,
I love this. I love this for a lot of reasons. When I was working in music journalism, there was a very intentional, as Quinn says, shift from a sort of music that was coming. You would hear your Brand Nubians, your Public Enemies, your X-Plans, and then all of a sudden you wouldn't. They wouldn't be programmed on radio. They wouldn't be programmed on video shows. They wouldn't be, and those shows were created by people who did not look like the people who were doing this sort of music. There became a kind of marketing of the bad guy image, the Scarface film, and things of that sort. DC talks all the time about how much more Batman stuff they sell than everything else, because people want to look at this edge of it, this kind of edgy, kind of rough. The world is hard, and I am vengeance, and I need a lozenge, and all that sort of thing. So, with this sort of cultural shift in mind, you combine that with the fact that with Citizens United, the opportunity was given for people with massive amounts of money to affect the public discourse through education, through defunding education, through humongous swaths of the country, through defunding arts education, extracurricular programs, to creating a certain sort of behavioral norm and an intellectual norm through humongous parts of the country, through lobbying, through funding, through altering legislation. These cultural factors are not accidental. These cultural factors are not coincidental. These cultural factors are all part of a larger shift towards something to create an environment where, in the last few years, we've seen certain people get drastically richer, and a huge number of people get drastically worse off.
Writer's strike. I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you. All the way up to the writer's strike. In a world where you can accept that Superman doesn't hope, you can accept that you don't deserve any freaking money. Right. You can accept a world where certain people don't deserve the right to live, the right to make choices about their own biology, the right to speak about their own cultures in the public domain, where they don't have the right to worship the way that they feel like, because your way is right and their way is wrong, because you're in Congress with a gun and look like Dollar Tree Baroness or whatever Lauren Boebert looks like. So when you combine,
oh, that shit, that's amazing. Was that too far? No, but I'm going to use that, and then I'm going to use it at work, and nobody's going to get who the Baroness is, and then I'm going to get in trouble.
I'm just saying, the second I saw with the gun behind, I was like, holy crap, Baroness got elected to Congress. Yeah. Holy crap. But like a cheap knockoff version.
This is disrespectful. This is disrespectful to the Baroness. She has at least 2 brain cells to rub together.
In the same way
it's like Baroness with 5 points of articulation.
Exactly. If Ron Harper was a poor man's Michael Jordan, then Lauren Boebert is a Dollar Tree version of the Baroness. That's what we have. Reality, the fact that we now are at a place where we can have a Dollar Tree version of the coolest female villain that I remember from my childhood, that shows that we're Ralph Wiggum on the bus. I'm in danger.
Feminism win.
Yeah.
Oh no. So does that make her husband Destro? Because I'm sure he wears a tinfoil hat.
No, that makes him the Family Dollar Destro, because it's clearly not beryllium steel. Absolutely, yeah.
No, it's just tinfoil. No, it's just tinfoil.
Also, Destro's into grown-ups, so that's different too.
Oh wow!
You know what? After reviewing the play on the field, the officials will let that play stand. There's no penalty.
Let that go.
They'll let that stand.
Yeah, touchdown is good. Oh wow! Yeah. So I like this idea because, Superman loses his power under the red sun, but red kryptonite makes him an a-hole, and it's like they're trying to give us red kryptonite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this idea of the bad Superman, and I like that you touched on that, Jim, is less a battle of the bad Superman and more a battle of the people who are propagating these iterations of, right? Because it is intentional and it is insidious, and oh my God, the other guy is Dollar Tree Lex Luthor. We're doomed. We're all dead.
Yep.
Matt Gaetz? Oh no.
Let me ask you that, because Quinn, you bring up an interesting point. If this is the case, then is not the indication of a bad Superman the canary in the coal mine? Is it not a warning for us as a culture that, oh no, we're going the wrong way?
No.
So here's
I don't think so. I don't think so, because I think the point here is that the bad Superman is a storytelling technique that needs to be in conversation with good Superman in order for it to be effective, right? It needs to have at least some component of it that is being defined as the absence, right? The story about a bad Superman has to be about the absence that the bad Superman has in order for it to be meaningful commentary on A, the Superman myth as a whole, and B, on the society that we live in. There is actually value in masterman Superman, right? In the Nazi Superman, if he is being utilized correctly. There is actually value in Homelander in the show, even though the people watching the show don't get that they're being made fun of. But
Does that mean
there is
anything,
the
though?
problem is Man of Steel Superman is not about the absence of something. Man of Steel Superman is being propped up, and Man of Steel Superman is the Earth 43, the corporate Superman from Morrison's run. It's the one that gets co-opted by the military industrial society or military industrial complex to sell a product and not have it, and it does not have any meaning or depth or purpose to it. It is just a logo being used to brand things, right? And that's what Man of Steel Superman is. Man of Steel Superman is the S logo slapped on top of an entirely different thing being used to sell a product and not tell a story that is meaningful to people.
Yeah,
it's not an S. It means hope.
I want to let John put in, because I have a question, but I want to see what John has to say first.
No, I was going to say if they're not getting the joke, in a sense, what's the point? The damage is done. It's a reflection of the damage done. If this is part of the overall culture, it doesn't matter if the rest of us are going, ha, 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 look at the Nazis. It's, look, we're surrounded by Nazis. I think the bad Superman without the good Superman actually not just with the good edges filed off, but literally, like Hannibal was saying, completely mirrored into the exact opposite of the cultural force it was. I mean, aren't we past making fun of these people? Don't we need to grab the Superman?
I like that a lot. I like that. I want to just real quickly towards that, because that's exactly where I was going. The idea that a bad Superman period is a slippery slope, and I'm going to frame it in this. In the 70s, there was a character created named Tyra, who was intended to bring diversity into the Legion of Superheroes. It was supposed to be a black superhero, and the people who were making him hated it. They didn't want to do it at all. So they did everything that they could to make the worst possible character they had. He had sonic powers, which were hard to draw. He had this ridiculous costume. He had this humongous afro. His name was even a riff on the idea of what they thought black names were supposed to be. He was supposed to be all these horrible things. But when I was growing up in Memphis, when I opened the comic and I saw him, I'm like, he came from an island that only has to interact with the regular world once every 30 years, where black people are free, where they don't have any problem. This is the best thing I've ever seen in my entire freaking life. I found representation. I found heroism there. I found something for me. I found something great. The problem there is that when you come to Homelander, that you don't have this greater conversation. You see the edgelords say, this is for me. This is my inspiration. This empowers me to get a tiki torch and drive a Dodge Challenger into a crowd full of people. And that's why I brought up the canary in the coal mine thing, that, the idea of having this conversation, this greater cultural thing, is great until you deal with actual America. It's not possible. It's not feasible with the diminishment of their education. Go ahead.
Here's why I feel like there is some, no pun intended, hope here with this being such a visual thing. There have been better metaphors that have gone further over the heads of the intended, and you wouldn't get this kind of cross association. My example is this: the people in question that we're talking about here are the stormtroopers. They're the Empire, but they think they're Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
They only needed the vested power on the side that they want to be on for them to do the most crucial of things: identify themselves. See, the beauty of bad Superman is that it's antithetical. It's on its face doesn't make any sense. The saying of the phrase is about the conundrum itself. Superman is good. That's why you need a prefix for the guy. You understand? So better to have an out loud bad Superman than a stormtrooper who thinks he's a Jedi. It is better to live in a world where the guy wears the t-shirt, because see, now we're at a point where, and to bring another franchise into this tangent, I come across regularly people who think of themselves as Star Trek fans as per sticking to canon, to quote Miguel O'Hara and that representative audience that he's speaking to. Because for them, canon is Star Trek circa the 1960s show where women still wore short skirts and you can call them a dame. And the president would get on the bridge and say, there's a negress here. So that fits into the version that they want. They bristle at Michael Burnham giving a Vulcan hello. Look, the season was weak. I'll give you that much. But a lot of the anger was about who the captain becomes, who gets to give the phrase, who gets to say, let's fly. That is the issue, because it is easier to say you're on the right side, right? Again, like I'm trying not to, this speaks to so many things that I'm trying not to fly off everywhere. But even with those who mean well, you take a Bernie Sanders, seems a good bloke. He wears a good coat. You know what I'm saying? I like him. But also, I have the right to question him or hold him to account if I see something weird. And him flashing a picture marching with MLK ain't enough, right? So the nuance that comes with the more complicated story of, okay, let's have Superman here in frame so that we can discuss why bad Superman is bad. Yes, there are people who are circumventing that and trying to cheat. And there are audience members who are not connecting with the fact that they are identifying with the bad guy. Mm-hmm. But I would rather a Dunning-Kruger not be in on the joke, and I can protect those in the only way that we really can in this world. Identify the problem, try to stay away from it, work as part of a collective to become a part of a solution, right? And those are largely quiet things. When a guy's beating his chest with a Homelander shirt on and he doesn't know any better, you are witnessing mental illness. Go the other way. This is actually a solution in the world that we live in, because there is no Superman here. So him being a symbol and a barometer allows us to at least navigate this very dangerous world at this very dangerous time. So he is around, and he is hope, and he is helping. We just have to recalibrate how we're receiving the signals from.
I don't always trust you when we, you talk about the guy with the Homelander shirt, and then he talks about how this is that kind of people is being made fun of. Do you ever get the feeling that some of these folks, and I'm thinking of the TV version, really, I can't remember who the creators are, so maybe I'm doing them a terrible injustice.
Oh, no. You're
some of these folks sort of subconsciously are hiding behind satire. They're like, making fun of
absolutely,
but they actually dig it. They're the ones who spend the time and the love and the care in crafting their story in, Homelander taking somebody's head off. And it's easy to say it's satire. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a weird thing that I feel about Seth Rogen, who is the producer of The Boys. He has a really good track record with taking Ellis's work, which often leaves a lot, and getting a better message out of it than Ellis was able to do himself.
Ennis. Yeah, sorry.
Ennis. I keep saying Ellis, but yeah, Ennis.
Edgelord, not Sex Pest.
Yeah, that's the one. Thank you, Jim. My God.
Gotcha. Dang.
What a time to be alive. So yeah, but I look at that and I think with him, it's about a certain degree of economy of storytelling that just works out in his favor. But for me, for my money, in spite of what I hope Gunn does for the DC universe moving forward, Brightburn is the sticker for me. It feels like the most blatant attempt at what we're talking about, this kind of bad Superman in absentia, right? There is no counter to him. There is no alt to him. He presumably begins a reign of terror at the end of the movie. And I think that to me was probably the worst iteration of me coming across a piece of media and going, my God, I hope people don't take this and go, that's me. Like, I think that was as dangerous as it got and as blatant as it got. I think that the good thing about Superman is you can't really have this conversation and not acknowledge him.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a Jehovah's Witness saying that sentence, but yeah, you can't have that conversation and not acknowledge him. Oh.
Yeah. Well, and you know, Brightburn was rough, but I think what's giving me a little bit of hope about the storytelling moving forward is that the news that they're focusing on Supergirl, on Woman of Tomorrow, that recent series, because that was very quietly one of the most powerful declarations of hope. No, you know what? Did you read the whole thing, Hannibal? I
did.
face.
I read the whole thing.
The Argo City scene where she's hammering the lead into the ground.
There are moments, yeah, but as a whole, I don't know if I can go with this. I don't know where you're going. I cannot follow.
Okay, I think
let me hear
came
why
back around. It started. Yeah, I do. So it started out as she's just Rooster Cogburn, right? And it was it was tough at the beginning, but you get to the Argo City scenes, which were some of my favorite Kara moments in any story that I've read or seen with Supergirl in it. And then when it comes back around at the end and it turns out that she was just rehabilitating the guy and that she wasn't actually trying to hound him to death across the universe, I feel like the sweep of the story worked, whereas some of the moments in the beginning of it set it up to not work. So tell me why I'm wrong.
And after reading the whole thing, if I lived in a United States that had not had education defunded by the Koch brothers over decades, sure, this might work. Because what you're talking about is a nuanced point. Nuance was taken out behind the White House and murdered sometime during the last presidential administration. It's dead. It does not exist. And any attempt to interpret things through the lens of nuance, at best, are hopeful, and at worst, are dangerously naive in the cultural zeitgeist that we have now. There are not enough rebels to attack this Death Star. You don't have there's not enough snub fighters to make this work. And in a different world, I might agree with you, but in that, every act right now has to be seen as political in these really dangerous times. Yeah, it's the wrong message at the wrong time. It's taking too long. I remember I had a date once where I took a woman out and she really liked me, but I didn't find out that she really liked me until after I dropped her off at home. And she was like, "I really wished you to kiss me goodnight." I'm like, "Why I was moving in, why didn't you go for it? I mean, why are you telling me this when it's too late?" That's the whole canary in the coal mine thing that I'm saying, that any Argo City, any, discussion of a good Superman in contrast to bad Superman, that's great, but they're playing the music and the Titanic is going down.
That's a very, very fair read, and I don't think I can argue with it.
So we've taken up a lot of your guys' time. This has been so much fun. Yes. I think this might be more fun than I have ever had on this program. This is an absolute blast.
Comfortably go for another hour, but
oh my God, yes. Oh my God. So yeah, you guys are all over the web, obviously. So where would you point folks if you had to pick just a few of the places where would you like people to go to find you?
Well, I'll start with another aside. We were talking about the connection to Ayn Rand and the Zack Snyder works. My company, Legends Press, which you can find at legendspresscomics.com, actually comes from the idea that if Atlas shrugged, then Legends Press. That's literally the attitude of the company. So you can find me at legendspresscomics.com. You can find myself and Hannibal at operative.net. Also, I guess I wasn't doing a good enough job of plugging myself. I just completed a Kickstarter with my man Greg Burnham on a project called Little Rock Files, which is near and dear to my heart. And it just successfully funded, and I'm working on it currently now. So you can go to Kickstarter and look up Little Rock Files, and you can find me there as well. Also, I worked on another project called The Legend of the Black Fist. That's created by Najee Strickland. That's also currently in a Kickstarter. So, you know, you could always find me near a cash register when you put your money in.
Pulling the register, pulling the arm on the register to make the money go in.
That's right.
I love
That's right.
And Hannibal,
as for me, you can look for me at HannibalTabu.com. As Quinn noted, it's also operative.net. And I am currently if you go to Unlikely Hero Studios, they're selling, actually, I can't even believe I'm saying these sorts of things, dice sets and other merchandise related things with my Dungeons and Dragons campaign setting guide, Sundering the Nation Beneath Our Feet. I'm now running paid games for it. I'm having a blast and just really having a great time writing fantasy content this way, and just kind of going kind of amok and doing games and doing lots of voices. So that's you can find me at HannibalTabu.com. And I used to say one social media site, but it's kind of gone the way of MySpace these days. It's kind of crappy. So yeah, just go straight to the domain and you'll find the important, relevant details there.
Well, this has been such an important conversation. I wish I could inject this into brains across the country. Really been.
I always say just add more Quinn, things go better. That's my motto.
Oh,
we've done the Lord's work for our tens of listeners, John, so you should be proud of that.
Tens of 11. Tens of 11.
There are dozens of us.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much. This has been, I second everything that John said. This has been an absolute blast, and I'm really grateful that you guys took the time to chat.
And thank you for having us.
All right.
Thank you.
Our theme music is by Christopher Piatek.